What happened to the plans we made? We're just getting older. If you could have spoke to your former self, what would you have told her? You see my face as though you paid. Survivorflux back with another episode recap and reaction. Today we're going to be talking about episode 3, Out for Blood. But first, if you guys could like below, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. It'd be greatly appreciated. Let's get on with it. As always, we're going to start with fire token and advantage count, just to keep everyone up to date. So as of the end of this episode, Amber has 0 tokens, Danny has 0 tokens, Sandra has 0 tokens, Sarah has 0 tokens, Parvati has 2, Rob has 2, Denise has 2, and Natalie now has 3 tokens, while everyone else only has 1. We have Sarah, who we'll talk about in a little bit, got the steal a vote advantage. Jeremy still has safety without power. We've got Kim with half an idol, Sophie with half an idol, and then Adam wound up giving his half back to Denise, so she has 1 full idol. And then Sandra does have an idol, which it sounds like is good for the next 2 tribal councils that she goes to. There's a little bit of debate about that. Comment below if I wound up missing it, but I believe that she can use it for the next 2 tribal councils that she attends. All right, so we don't actually open up at Edge of Extinction this time. We open up with a little what I would call foreshadowing, with Rob kind of messing with Adam with the leaf. Then we hear a confessional from Adam. He wants to get Parvati out, and he actually says that Rob might need to start playing a little more like Adam himself, which by the end of the episode, that will obviously be a little debatable. And this immediately introduces the through line of this episode: voting someone off but trying to maintain a relationship with their alliance members. And we'll talk about it more towards the end of the episode, but that's not how you play the game. When someone's voting with someone else just to stay safe, that's one thing. But when people are established friends for years and strong alliance members, you just don't need to go tell those alliance members that you want to vote one of them off. And it's just too obvious that Adam's trying to protect himself and stay in good graces with absolutely everyone by doing this. And Adam admits it's dangerous to try to cater to Rob while also trying to get rid of Parvati. But one thing that I've thought of is, because in the only other Edge of Extinction season that we've seen, the entire Edge of Extinction, the jury was 14 members. It was the biggest jury, 15 members. It was the biggest jury that we've ever had. And so they didn't really mention it in the episode, but I think Adam might also be thinking that everyone who goes to Edge will be eventually on the jury. And so he's trying to stay in good with everyone, even in the early parts of the game. And then we jump over and Denise says she got the token from Danny, but this time they actually don't show her opening it up, which is fine. Anything that we can do to cut down on time and focus on the strategy is good with me. And it's revealed that before, there was a lot of debate as to Adam hiding his half at that last tribal when they dumped their bags, Denise hiding her half. And it turns out that Adam actually gave back his half of immunity to Denise before that tribal council. And then we see Adam, Ben, and Michelle discussing Rob versus Parvati. Ben initially says that he can't work with Rob anymore because they're both alpha males. And I think he feels a little bitter after the last tribal council. He was very targeted by Parvati and Rob. And I think that Rob actually, in dumping the bags, was trying to make Ben look bad, and that he might have assumed that Ben actually had an idol. But Ben does say that he's okay with going Parvati, and Adam begins his plan of keeping Parvati's alliance members happy by telling Ethan he's got his back. And then Ethan asks him outright, but what about Parvati's back? And Adam essentially begins to reveal that they do want to get one of the old schoolers out. And I think Adam's just thinking too long-term here. His long-term plans have negative reactions in the short-term game. And we'll get to it during tribal council, but Ethan even speaks to this, even though he's the one voted off, that he needs to he does want to focus on the long term, but all he needs to do is get through this vote tonight, which he doesn't wind up doing. And also, something people might not realize is that Parvati and Ethan are actually extremely close. And then Parvati and Rob are actually really close. So Parvati's actually closer to each of those other old schoolers than they are to each other. And then we jump to Dakal, the Red Tribe. A lot of this is fun filler stuff, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. I did enjoy it, thought it was good for the episode. But Sandra says after this, she is retiring from Survivor. This will be her last season. We've definitely heard people say that before, so who knows. But it's good to see her finally strategizing and trying to be a provider. In an interview between Rob Sesternino and Rupert on Rob Has a Podcast, actually Rupert did reveal that Sandra is more of a provider in her past seasons than people might realize. So this isn't new, her trying to help out catch fish, that kind of stuff. Rupert said that she's actually really good around camp, but that's not something we've really seen in her previous edits. And we get a little bit from Tyson about this being a new position for him, being on the bottom, because even when he was voted out of Heroes vs. Villains and out of Tocantins, he was on the top in Heroes vs. Villains and wound up making a huge mistake. And then in Tocantins, he thought that he was on top and felt confident up until the point he was voted out on each of those seasons. So this is a new position for him. And we actually see Tyson around the water well pitching Sandra's name to Yul and Sophie. We don't get a lot from Sophie, but Yul does say that he wants to play with people he can trust, and he says he doesn't trust Tyson quite yet, which is something Yul actually told Tyson to his face in the first episode. But we get the great little scene where Sandra's net caught a shark, and Tony almost gets bitten. Similar to the latter thing from the last episode, it's just Tony trying to assimilate with this tribe, trying to get rid of and disperse his energy while still not being seen as a threat. So I think at least from what we've seen, he's doing a pretty good job of that so far. Anything they want to show us from Tony is welcome to me. As you guys know already, Tony's who I'm rooting for this season. Tony, Yul, and Ethan are my three favorites, even though I do like a lot of people from this season. But even though Tony's not my number one favorite player, which I'll reveal who that is to you guys at a later date, Tony is my absolute favorite winner. I would want to say Richard Hatch, but as far as just watching Tony on screen, Tony's my favorite winner. And he played an extremely aggressive game in Cagayan. He wasn't quite as much of a villain as, say, Russell Hantz, but he played an extremely good game, and he played really dynamically, and he played hard, and he was willing to do what he had to do to win, and still wound up winning. It seems like someone like that in the past, we just don't see people who play like that win. But he actually won because people had to admit that he played a great game. And then during this whole catching the shark thing, Yul says that it's really important to keep tribe morale up, and Sandra's helping feed people, and he doesn't want to lose her. So we see that he's not exactly leaning towards Tyson's pitch, and he actually goes to Sandra in the very next scene and tells her Tyson is gunning for her, which I think is actually a really smart move for Yul. He wants to keep those two fighting against each other, and it's not like in any way Sandra's gonna run to Tyson and say you're throwing out my name, and then Tyson's gonna go to Yul when Tyson has absolutely no sway or power in the tribe and try to make Yul look like a bad guy for that. That's not gonna happen. So Yul sees that they're separated and that he can keep them fighting against each other and hopefully keep the target off of Yul's own back. Now we finally jump to Extinction. I'm not going to talk too much about this either. Danny catches a fish, which is cool for her. It seems like this little determination package that they set her up for, because she says that it was all worth it just catching this fish. You know, she wanted to go far in the game, but she caught this fish. But then when it comes to actually searching with Natalie and Amber for the advantage, she seems to be the one that has the least creative ideas about figuring out the lock, and then she seems to give up the quickest. But that might just be the edit, but it seems kind of contradictory to the little bit they gave us of her so proud of herself for catching the fish and surviving. But they each get a note with a picture of a white tree on it. It's nice to see Amber's determination as she thinks she solved it. She does have an idea, but it turns out to not be the right one as far as numbers being on the crates and various items around camp. And then we see that Natalie figures it out with the shells. I love seeing her throw Amber's shells or Danny's shells in the bushes and then smashing the other person's shells. That was great. And then similar to the previous two times that she solved the Edge of Extinction puzzle, she gets the offer of a steal a vote advantage that she can exchange with anyone still in the game for a fire token. And I found it odd that Natalie chose Sarah of everyone, but then they remind us that Sarah in a previous season, Game Changers, played the steal a vote advantage correctly. And so if Natalie actually remembered that, and that was her tactic because Sarah would see the value in the steal a vote, then kudos to her. But I actually wasn't thinking that when I was watching this episode until they swung back to that flashback. And all that she says in the actual edit is that she's picking someone that's risky enough to do it. But this advantage is a little different. It's not just a token for an advantage. Sarah actually has to sneak into the opposing camp, which we saw something similar to this with Vince in season 39 for the first time. She actually has to sneak into the opposing camp to get the advantage after she gets the offer. It looks like she has to accept the offer and give up her fire token, and then find out if she actually pulls off sneaking into the opposing camp. And Sarah pretty much, they show her debating the offer a little bit, but she mentions how it worked for her in the past, the steal a vote, and she pretty much immediately accepts the offer. We get a nice funny scene where Tony's helping Sarah conceal herself. I don't see how that's so important if it's completely dark outside, but it was a nice little scene. And I love that Tony calls her Officer Sarah, because they're both cops. They're in Cops Are Us. And when he's even talking to the camera, to the producers, he refers to her as Officer Sarah. I also think that this scene shows that Sarah truly does trust Tony now. I mean, Tony now knows that she's going for this advantage, and Sarah shares that with him and really seems to trust the fact that that information will stay between the two of them. And I think at this point in the game, she should trust Tony, at least for the time being. I think he's playing a really defensive game this time, which is smart of him, and he needs friends, and he can trust Sarah. So I think in that way, she also should trust him. And then we see Sarah sneak into the Sele camp, the Blue Tribe's camp, and it's so hard to tell with the edit exactly how much danger is she in. But I do like that she says a guy is sleeping 10 feet from her, which seems to indicate that she can't even tell who it is. It looks like it's Ben from the edit, but I do like that little touch. But the editors build up the suspense really nicely, and she accomplishes her mission. And then we go to tribal immunity. No one seems shocked that Danny got voted out. They're just kind of like, okay. Danny voted out at the, all right. And then they just move on. But that is a signal that both old and new school players are being voted out of the Blue Tribe. We had Natalie go, and then we have Danny. And Sandra sits out of this challenge because they're up in numbers. People complained online, like, why does Sandra always sit out? It's the smartest strategy. I can't picture Sandra jumping back and forth on those platforms. I mean, she's being a provider to her tribe. Sandra's not necessarily my favorite player out there by any means, but why would they sit out anyone but the person who is least likely to perform well in this challenge? And this challenge is pretty basic, several legs of a race to get to a puzzle at the end. Rob can't pull out the ball throwing is one thing to note from this, and then Ben picks it up for him. I think this was pretty well edited as far as the climax with the puzzle, but I just felt like DeCall had it the whole time. And so DeCall winds up winning, and we jump back to the Blue Tribe. And there's the nice little 2 minutes of them standing off, discussing the standoff, the fact that no one wants to be the first to stand up and go off and talk. But in this tribe, largely, a lot of people know where each other stand, even though we'll see that there is a lot of discussion going on. I don't think if any of those people had stood up first, that everyone would have ganged up on them, because people already do have their voting blocks that they're working with and their alliances. But Jeremy's the first to leave, and Ben quickly follows him. We see Denise, Jeremy, and Ben talk, and at that point it seems like they're solid on Parvati, but Adam is so focused on not upsetting the remaining two old schoolers. But one of my favorite scenes from this episode was Adam and Rob talking, and Rob's throwing names out there, new schooler names out there, and Adam asks if there are any other possibilities. And Rob says something great like, so we're gonna go there, He knows exactly what Adam's getting at, but Rob plays it really well because he's just like, oh, I don't know, are you going to keep me safe? He's clearly not happy about it, but Adam says he'll protect Rob in the long term. And Adam says in a confessional that telling people strategic truths at important times is huge, but again, he's actually not thinking short term enough. And then we get a great confessional from Rob, and he says, is this kid crazy? He's seen me play before. Like, Adam's a student of the game. He knows that Rob is loyal when he actually has a true alliance. He sticks with his people. We saw him turn on Matt in Redemption Island and kind of Grant, but he was never really in with Matt, even though they were put on the same tribe, and he only picked Grant off once the numbers were dwindling. And then in another one of my favorite scenes from this episode, Rob goes to Michelle and Jeremy and says, I know what's up. And Jeremy and Michelle are kind of trying to be like, we were just talking about maybe it not being what you thought it was going to be. And this appears to be the real turning point of the episode. Adam had 5 people willing to vote for Parvati, 3 old schoolers on the outs, and Rob reveals to Jeremy and Michelle that Adam is talking to these other old schoolers and trying to stay in their good graces. And then we see Rob go to Parvati, tell her Adam's plan, and she's obviously down to go with Adam now. Parvati was shown so little in this episode that it actually, to me, didn't feel like she was going home. Even when it's between 2 or 3 people, they tend to show those people a decent amount. And it was shocking that Ethan went home because he wasn't shown that much, but we did see Michelle and Jeremy discussing getting rid of Ethan. Michelle just kind of throws it out as they're discussing everything after Rob reveals that Adam told Rob the plan. And then we do see Ethan at the beginning of this episode being told by Adam that is in fact the plan. So it was a little shocking, but I just felt like it was going to be Adam because of how much Adam we got in this episode. I thought it would be a real Adam blindside. But we do see Parvati a little bit, and she calls it the cardinal rule of Survivor. Don't tell a close ally of the person you intend to blindside that that's what you're planning to do. And we get a great line that reminds me of Heroes vs. Villains with JT and Russell stuff, where she says she's ready to spit out Adam's bones on the edge of extinction. But in general, going into this tribal, it really feels like Jeremy and Michelle are in control of this episode. Michelle's actually the first one, like I said, to bring up Ethan's name, but they don't show them discussing it that much. And for some reason, they think that Ethan being voted out won't rock the boat as much, and it'll keep Rob kind of more chill. And they're right, Parvati really is the linchpin in the old school trio alliance. So in a way, it seems to make sense to take her out because Rob and Ethan aren't as close to each other. But the both of them will be that more upset if Parvati is voted out than each other because they are so close to Parvati. And then we finally get to see scenes where the other 2 new schoolers, Denise and Ben, are told about Adam spilling the beans. And that's exactly what I was waiting for. How does Denise, Adam's closest ally, react to this situation? And Denise played it pretty much like she's played it throughout. She's shocked. I think she is genuinely shocked. But as opposed to Adam, she's trying to be on the right side of the numbers without having to call the shots yet. She wants to know what's up. She'll definitely give her 2 cents. But she doesn't, from what we see, try to tell anyone what they should be doing. She just takes other people's advice, listens to what they have to say, and tries to make sure that it's not her going home. And it's the same with Ben. In confessionals, he's giving us more opinions on the other players than we've seen from Denise, and more opinions on the vote so far, but he's actually not pushing his agenda. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, he says that he wants Rob out, but he is willing to switch to Parvati by the time that they lose the immunity challenge. So going into Tribal, it really does seem like it's between Parvati and Adam, even though we did see the little bit of discussion from Michelle and Jeremy about Ethan. And the Tribal Council itself, I don't think every Tribal Council needs to be explosive like some of the ones we've gotten in past seasons. And this one's a decent one, but everyone's pretty much playing their cards pretty close. We see the little discussion between Rob and Adam. Rob getting called out for having a statue of his head on the actual island. He's like, why you gotta say it? And Adam doesn't really defend his point that well, but he's playing the game just like Rob says. And the themes of trust and tribal unity are seen throughout this. Michelle compares being in an alliance or trusting people to dating, and then Ben makes the bunker analogy. They kind of go on for too long about it, about being in other people's bunkers and stuff like that. But we finally get to the vote, and I love the way that they revealed this. They show Parvati first, and then we get 3 from Adam. And at that point, I really thought that Adam was going to go home, and then it would be like the Danny vote, where everyone gangs up on Adam. But then as soon as we see 2 Ethans, I did the numbers in my head, and I realized, obviously, even though they don't show it at the end of the episode, obviously Adam voted for Parvati. The 3 old schoolers voted for Adam because they had spent the day trying to sway all the other new schoolers to just go ahead and get rid of Adam. And then obviously the 4 new schoolers that aren't Adam voted for Ethan. They were trying not to give Adam exactly what he wanted, but still trying to keep the new schoolers strong, which in a way, I feel like it might have been smarter to just go ahead and pick off Adam. We see in the preview for the next episode that that's what Jeremy and Michelle are discussing. We got to get Adam out. We got to get Adam out. Well, they had a chance to get Adam out. It could have been a 7-1 vote. And so it's so questionable whether it was smart to pick off Ethan. But I guess in the end, they think that it's smarter to keep their numbers, their new school numbers, strong. And Ethan leaves. Like I said, he was one of the 3 main people that I was rooting for going into this season. So it's really disappointing to see him leave. And they've also shown him quite a bit. I guess they were just happy that he was back on Survivor, so they want to make the most of it. But the amount that they'd been showing him really gave me the impression that he was going to make it further in the game than he did. But he obviously bequeaths his fire token to Parvati, so now she has 2, and we see him wind up on the edge of extinction, first guy to be voted out. And going into the next episode, I'm most excited to see the fallout from this tribal council. I cannot wait to see Adam's reaction, how he talks to everyone, but he also was shown that he's not in power. 2 of the people left on his tribe voted for him, and then the 4 people that he felt he was in an alliance with did not tell him what was up and voted a completely different way. So I can't wait to see his reaction. I hope we get to see him trying to talk to Denise explaining herself, why she didn't tell him, but he really isn't in power. So he can't exactly be one of those people that goes back after a tribal council and tries to start a witch hunt on anyone, because everyone felt like Adam was in the wrong. The new schoolers who voted for Ethan felt like Adam was in the wrong. The 3 old schoolers thought he was in the wrong. He obviously didn't garner the relationships with Ethan, who's now out of the game, and Rob that he was hoping to. And then he threw his vote on Parvati. So she's not going to welcome him with open arms either. It doesn't look like they're mixing up tribes for the next episode. We might see that in next week's preview before the episode. I do wish they'd mix up tribes, because I hate when you just see the same tribe going to tribal council over and over again. But if we do get to see DeCall go to tribal next time, that's fine. It looks like they're not going to do an 8-8 split with 2 tribes and mix them up, but they have to do a tribe mix-up, tribe swap at some point. So maybe if they don't do it in the next episode, we'll be down to 15 players. Then they'll swap everything up and have 3 tribes of 5 going into the 5th episode. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought of this episode in the comments below. Like I said, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching, and peace out.